Good morning to all. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and esteemed GEM colleagues, thank you to each and every one of you for being here with us today. As regards our GEM colleagues, we're very pleased to be able to welcome those of you that have been part of the GEM family for many years, as well as those who are new to the consortium. GEM has now existed for some 24 years, chalking up a significant, now I would actually say formidable, record in rigorous annual entrepreneurship research, resulting in data and analysis that allows policymakers, international organizations, and academic institutions to positively influence and impact the lives of individual entrepreneurs the world over. So before we get started today, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to all of you who generously helped to make this celebratory event come together successfully. Special thanks to Professor Rico Baldegger and Associate Professor Raphael Gundar for their hospitality in hosting GEM's global report launch at this fine Swiss institution, which is HEG-Fribourg. And Raphael, it was a pleasure to work with the Swiss clockwork efficiency, as I have often said to you over the last few weeks. Thank you. I'd like to say thanks also to the students of HEG-Fribourg who have volunteered to help us today. Your contribution to the day is greatly appreciated. Thanks to my team also, Alicia Coduras, Francis Carmona, Kevin Anselmo, Enrico Bastos, and very specially Aurea Almanso, who has worked tirelessly to make sure that everything ticks like the proverbial Swiss clock. I'd also like to thank Steve Hill, who's the main author of this report and coordinated the report with a plethora of GEM authors. And I especially want to thank our sponsors, Babson College, the Cartier Women's Initiative, and HEG-Fribourg itself. And last but certainly not least, I'd like to say thank you to you, the GEM colleagues, because they say in English, it takes a village to produce this multidimensional GEM global report. It's the annual state of the art of entrepreneurship. Yeah, 370 plus researchers, 300 plus research and academic institutions, and 200 plus funding institutions. We have a lot to be proud of. GEM began in 1999 as a joint project between Babson College in the United States and London Business School in the UK. Today, GEM is the richest source of information for global intelligence on entrepreneurship. So we are here today to celebrate the product of our year's work, and at the same time share our learning with the world. Over the next few months, we will leverage this work further with a series of special reports, a plethora of national reports, and multiple webinars, publications, and articles in peer-reviewed journals, press, and in social media. And we begin our 25th anniversary year of research. I'd like to give the floor now to Rico, so that he can make some introductory remarks and introduce our valued keynote speakers. Thank you, Rico.
Okay, my technical colleague has some problem, so I will explain it. Welcome to to all our colleagues, from, I saw it from more or less 40 countries, and clearly, our goal is, let's on one hand, to explain a little bit why Switzerland, and to give you this kind of introduction. So video should here, let's say, give you some information why. Okay, we keep it. Raphael, we go forward. Clearly, one of what is always mentioned in relation to Switzerland is clearly innovation. And so this video should show you a little bit before about all this kind of innovation in the last more or less 40 years. What else, let's say, invented by Swiss entrepreneurs or by our Swiss ecosystem. It's clear. Innovation was always an important topic in relation to education in Switzerland. And clearly we have to find our way to invest in this kind of global world. And what is quite interesting always to see, really it depends, how we define innovation. Sometimes I'm not so sure we are really world-class in innovation. I'm more convinced probably we are world-class in invention. But that is not a debate, with our policymakers. Clearly, on the other side, on the other side, we have to, let's say, explain what is some typical facts about Switzerland. You see here some facts, what is quite interesting to see, even in relation to our report in the afternoon, as a late possibility to our agreements in Switzerland to vote. It's 71. In some states, even later on, So it's quite an interesting fact to see it. Clearly, hopefully, we have a strategy to be small and beautiful. I think that, in this way, we have 4 national languages, 4. It's quite important for you to know it, and clearly some languages is more close to Latin, like Romansh, and due to this kind of 4 languages, we have several names, of Switzerland, It came before name of Switzer. Switzer is an old name for Swiss. Pour le français, la Suisse, ça c'est clair. Hein? In Deutsch, Schweiz. In Schweizerdeutsch, Schweiz. In this way, a Switzer and Italiano. A Switzer and Romansh. So it's official languages, but we can say the official name of our country is, it's marked here, Confederatio Helvetica. And that's clear, it's made now domain name, CH. I think it's important to know this kind of part. Next slide, please. On one hand, clearly we are 60%, are else. So it's clearly, it even, let's say, an impact, we can say, in our culture. In one hand, we have to defend. In one hand, we have to hope we are a little bit openness, but we have the Alps and have an impact in our economy or even in our culture. That is obvious, We have some quite interesting innovation. The highest gravity dam, Grand Dixon of the world. Even here in Fribourg, we have a dam. It was the first in Europe, to show it in this kind of, they can say, sustainability approach years ago in this way. And I think, in this way, we have the longest time. So clearly, Switzerland always investing in major projects that we have not to underestimate. Please, next slide. Clearly, saying why Fribourg? Why Fribourg or Freiburg? Why you are here? It's always important. It's always a question to my kids. Why we're doing it? Fribourg, it is an old city. You see it here more 800 years ago. Created, we are a city in one hand, even 2 languages. We have here in the city 2 languages, German and the French. In this way, you are at the border, of the language, or we call it in in German Röstigraben, in this way. Quite interesting. You see, we have a lot of, we can even say, we are city of arts. City of arts, go to architecture, in this way. And we are not a financial city. It's clear. We cannot compete with Geneva, we cannot compete with Zurich, We even, what is positive, less expensive than Zurich and Geneva. So it's great for startups. It's this way to build their company. And at the end, we can say, a city for bridges. Bridges, could you go move forward, Raphael, please? Clearly, why bridges? On one hand, what I just told before, a bridge between French and German speaking. Even in the city, you see we are more or less already on the western part of Switzerland, We even, let's say, a bridge between industry and students. We are a university city. We have more or less 15,000 students in the city. Here on this campus, more or less 6,000 different faculties in this way. And what is always actually quite impressed me when I came to Fribourg. I'm not from Fribourg, When I came to Fribourg, it's this kind of cultural mix, There are several cultural mixes, not only between French and Germany, even a lot of, we have a huge Portuguese community in Fribourg in this way. And I think it's in a small place to have this kind of interaction, make it, in my opinion, quite inspirational. And at the end, we had even to ask about why the School of Management, Fribourg, yes, next one. In one hand, we try to create the bridges, So bridges is always, we like to create the bridges between academia and practice. So our philosophy is really to kind of balance, or even international colleagues. Here you see the last we can say, innovation here in Fribourg, the bridge for quite impressive part, And even we like to create bridges to other disciplines like arts. I think it's in the future, please, next one, Rafa. I think the bridges to, let's say, to have the inspiration even in business, in entrepreneurship, from arts, from festivals, I think it's quite important. Not only to be in your discipline. This kind of multidisciplinary approach is an important issue for us. But at the end, next one, please. We are a young business school. We are one of the youngest business schools in Switzerland. One of the youngest one. You have just here, let's say, welcome back. You have, let's say, our last book from the school, 30 years of inspiration. Also, we are young, we can say, called in French, novice. We try to build our let's say, we can footprint on it. And our footprint is based, what you see a little bit here, it was always based on entrepreneurial behavior of the people. Not only to teach it, it's easy to teach what you should do, but then you have to act. And we try to act like an innovative SME. That's a little bit our approach to do it. We invested in the last, let's say, more or less 15 years. We are in the chain since 2009. So we will, this year, I will be responsible for the 14th report for Switzerland. To credit, we invest in the last years a lot in relation to sustainability and societal impact. And we try to merge technology and business. So that's a little bit our approach to this way to do. And we, at the end, to finish it, you'll see here a little bit our center of expertise in our school. We just integrated the Center for Carbon Responsibility and Sustainability to be in as an associate institute, to cross the borders. I think it's coming back. We try to build the bridges. So in one hand here in Switzerland, but even clearly internationally. Thank you that you are here. You trust us, to host the event, Thanks to Aileen and Gen Consortium, to give us the trust to do it. We highly appreciate it. Thank you. What I just forgot before to say, you are here in an auditorium, you saw it here before, auditorium Beat Volland. Even Beat Volland is still here. Please stand up, Beat, come on. He was my boss. State councillor, council parliament, let's say he was really that we can, let's say, even host them today here. I think is even a huge, let's say, thank you, Beat, to make it possible, and I think we had always this kind of political support. I think we are, one for our guests here, we are a public school. We are public business school. On one hand, we have really support from the Confederation, Swiss Confederation, and the state of Fribourg. We are not a private business school, but clearly we try to increase the private support through foundation or companies. But that's important for you to mention in this way. And clearly, public support for us all is important, and we are always proud that our students, are going in the public, service, or as a policymaker. And the first example of, you can say the first keynote, she's not here, but we will try to present you through, a short video. Johanna Gapany, state councillor, former student from our school. I see she graduated in 2015, quite young. I think a young, policymaker in the Swiss parliament. And we like to show you, if possible, Raphael, or at least in his story.
Bonjour à toutes, bonjour à tous. Voilà, je suis Johanna Gapany, conseillère aux États pour le canton de Fribourg. Et c'est un plaisir de vous retrouver, même à distance aujourd'hui. Et j'ai surtout envie de vous dire, en tant qu'ancienne étudiante de cette école, bravo d'abord pour participer à cette rencontre, parce que c'est une rencontre qui compte pour Fribourg, pour notre avenir. Et puis merci pour le temps que vous consacrez, parce que c'est une thématique vraiment qui peut faire toute la différence. On dit souvent que la Suisse, elle n'a pas de ressources naturelles et je pense que la Suisse, elle a une culture qui est quand même incroyable, la culture du savoir. Et dans cette culture du savoir, les hautes écoles jouent un rôle fondamental puisqu'elles créent ce pont vraiment entre la théorie et la pratique et elles permettent, et en tant qu'ancienne étudiante, je l'ai quand même bien constaté, elles permettent quand on est en train de travailler en même temps d'acquérir certaines connaissances, d'acquérir en même temps certaines compétences et de transformer tout ça en quelque chose qui permet de créer de la valeur à la fin. La question de l'encouragement de l'entrepreneuriat, elle vient souvent et puis en fait, elle est déterminante parce que ce n'est pas certainement évident dans un pays comme le nôtre, dans lequel on a une certaine facilité par rapport à d'autres pays à trouver un emploi. Et puis aussi, on voit qu'il y a pas mal d'enfants d'entrepreneurs qui deviennent entrepreneurs. Donc, on voit là-dedans que le rôle de l'exemplarité, il est extrêmement important. Et peut-être qu'on devrait se poser la question pour nous de donner un petit peu plus tôt cet exemple aux jeunes, pas seulement aux jeunes, mais aussi aux enfants. Je me souviens qu'il y avait un programme, je ne sais pas s'il existe encore, mais c'était un programme qui s'appelait Graines d'entrepreneurs, qui était un programme extrascolaire et qui permet finalement aux enfants aussi de se fondre dans ce rôle d'entrepreneur. Ben, la fête est simple dans la conciliation entre la vie familiale et la vie professionnelle. Ça en vaut vraiment la peine. Par contre, c'est clair que les enfants, c'est notre avenir. Une Suisse sans enfants, c'est une Suisse aussi sans avenir. Et je pense qu'on a là-dedans un rôle essentiel à jouer. Par contre, ben, c'est clair que de dire aujourd'hui que c'est simple, ce serait vous mentir parce que autant la politique que le monde de l'entreprise exige une certaine flexibilité, ça prend sur les soirées, ça prend sur les week-ends. Et tout ça, bien évidemment, ça demande un engagement, non seulement de la personne, mais aussi de la famille. Donc, on va vers un monde un peu plus flexible, où tout le monde doit devenir un peu plus flexible. Et finalement, bah, c'est ça qui va rendre aussi la conciliation plus simple, aussi pour la famille. Vous participez aujourd'hui à une journée vraiment qui compte pour notre avenir. Alors, bravo à vous, je vous la souhaite vraiment enrichissante, intéressante. Et puis, j'espère qu'elle sera autant intéressante pour vous qu'elle compte pour notre avenir. Tout le meilleur.
Thank you, Johanna. As she has today an important finance meeting at the Capital, so she cannot be here, but we stay at the Swiss Parliament, The next speaker is in present, would I have give some keywords. I have for me some keywords: transparency, impact finance, sustainability, corporate purpose, and when you go on the website of his company, it's marked, wait a minute, you don't have bosses. That's right. Yes, welcome to Liip, The next speaker is Gerhard Andrey. Gerhard Andrey is co-founder of Liip. Gerhard is even, let's say, what I mentioned just before, let's say, Counsellor of the Swiss Parliament, So he's an entrepreneur and policymaker in this way. And he was, his company was always known by several perspectives. One perspective was a highly innovative organizational approach. It was one of, you can say for me, and hopefully you agree, Gerhard, one of the benchmark in holacracy in Europe. As I really put it down, and I can really confirm to you, he's really giving the company, empowering it. I think it's this way. But he is even, let's say, quietly, we can say, motivated and always invested in purpose, purpose-driven projects in sustainability, forward-looking, really a forward-looking guy. And it's really great that you are here, Gerhard. So close you, please.
Fix this. Thank you so much, Rico. I'm flattered. Thank you so much for these kind words, dear Rico. Dear guests, can we trust business to fix the world's problems? Dear business leaders, academics, students, and guests at today's conference, this question, which has been put to me, which I ask myself from time to time, and which many people out there would probably answer in the negative, is of course something that I have to deal with first and foremost on a personal level. After all, over the past 2 decades, I have co-founded and helped to build this digital agency, Liip, that now employs over 200 people at 6 locations here in Switzerland. Of course, it's not up to me to judge my own or my company's trustworthiness. And we can reflect on the trustworthiness of individual CEOs and board members. It simply doesn't make much difference to the debate about the trustworthiness, especially of large companies or entire industries in general. Ultimately, business leaders and companies are only as trustworthy as our economic system allows and encourages them to be. But why is trust in companies and corporate leaders up for debate at all? After all, economic prosperity has been unparalleled since the post-war era. The improvement in the quality of life for so many people on this planet is breathtaking when you look in the rearview mirror. More people than ever have access to clean water, access to healthy food, to education, to energy, and to much more things. But the downside of this economic miracle of the century is a battered planet on a catastrophic warming path. More and more carbon dioxide is being pumped into the atmosphere. More and more arable land is being sealed, and biodiversity is disappearing forever. The immense loss of species is now classified as the 6th mass extinction in Earth's history, as confirmed by various scientific studies. And all these negative impacts are mainly due to a phase in human evolution that began with the Industrial Revolution. The modern market economy has clearly failed to make ecologically and socially sustainable business models the norm, and politicians have failed to demand them. With all due respect, I don't trust this business to solve the world's problems. It needs an upgrade first. But why is humanity in a situation that threatens its very existence, and what role does the economy play in this? The short answer, the tragedy of the commons. The external costs of economic activity have been ignored and passed on to taxpayers, other countries, future generations, and of course, nature itself. Sometimes through a lack of understanding of second-order effects, but often through deliberate political interference by entire industries. A truly liberal market would have to include all costs of economic activity in the price of its products. Markets that do not have to include these costs of pollution or social consequences of precarious wages in their products and services are protected and better placed than those that do not receive these de facto subsidies. The actors who benefit are usually those who are well installed in the market and who have established political influence to maintain the status quo. The latter in particular is my daily routine in our national parliament. Don't get me wrong, I'm not all that interested in finding the culprits. Our current situation is due to a failure of society as a whole, a failure from which we can and must learn. What gets measured gets improved. Today, we know much more about complex physical, ecological, and social interrelationships. And if we use this knowledge wisely, we can turn this human crisis, which will lead to an economic crisis in medium term anyway, into an opportunity. Trust through transparency of impacts is the currency for this. Those who succeed in implementing trust in a systematically binding way will one day reap the benefits and assure a leading role, be it as a company or as an entire country. There are already countless efforts on the way to systemize the impact of economic activity on people and nature. And this is a good thing, but because it is often done all too casually and often without due diligence, people are led around by the nose with green and social washing. The financial market in particular is currently exposed to this accusation, especially as various studies prove the ineffectiveness or even the harmfulness of supposedly sustainable financial products. This, in turn, undermines trust. And it also shows that these initiatives cannot and probably should not be invented by every company on its own. And without public legitimation, it is unlikely to have a broad impact. Fortunately, today, we have a common understanding in the form of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. With these globally recognized and well-balanced objectives, we have a great foundation on which to build. And it is not only large companies that are now challenged, but especially small and medium-sized enterprises, which are the backbone of the economy. Ladies and gentlemen, I therefore call for an evidence-based and transparent impact accounting. Similar to what we are used to in finance, companies, but also the public sector should report systematically and comparably on their impact on people and the planet. A company that can demonstrate a positive impact will have competitive advantage, and those whose sustainability accounts are too far in the red will have to deposit the balance sheet. This is the logical consequence of serious social responsibility. In our company, Liip, we have started to measure the impact of our customer projects on people and the environment along these 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. Because we want to know if and how we are making the world a tick better and where we're still doing harm. For me personally, but also for the whole company, this confrontation was an incredibly motivating experience. I feel a great desire among my colleagues to take a closer look and methodically develop a view of the impact of our company's activities. Because the urge to be able to do something within one's own sphere of influence to overcome the crises of the century is becoming increasingly strong among many people. And I'm sure you feel that too. I believe in the power of business to transform the fossil-fueled one-way economy into a renewable circular economy. For that, we need to agree on the quality of economic impact on people and the planet. So that companies can agree on what actually makes the world a better place. Then it will also become easier to trust CEOs, board members, companies, and entire industries. Thank you so much for your attention. Have a great conference.
I think you heard just before, as part of trust as an important part, let's say, in the organization, and we have always been critical, even the term of business school, it's appropriate, I think that we have a critical reflection about it, and he mentioned before SMEs, here in Switzerland, it's our business, not a big band. SMEs, SMEs, and that was the idea, for the next speaker. The next speaker is Martin Godel, head of SME policy at the state sector for Switzerland. He is even, let's say, since I think 2021, the chair of the OECD committee on SMEs and entrepreneurship. So he is widely obviously involved, what will be the future in relation to SMEs? At the same time, he has had several hats, he was responsible for the implementation of the federal COVID liquidity program during the pandemic, to support more or less 140,000 companies, during the crisis. So and he is even in charge at the moment, for public investment fund. For startups. It's quite a special topic here in Switzerland. Martin, great that you are here. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Excellent. Wonderful. I hope you hear well at the very end of this long room here. This is impressive, the technology that helps bringing the voice to the back of the room. Distinguished Member of Parliament, dear Gerhard, Andrey, members of the faculty, dear members of the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, dear Beat von Lantzen, the name giver of this great auditorium, ladies and gentlemen, I want to start congratulating the Haute École de Gestion Fribourg for hosting this event. Bringing GEM to Switzerland is a fantastic idea. Turning inspiration into reality requires transpiration of a strong team doing all the important behind the scenes work. And I would like to thank each and every one of you who contributed to this event. It was marvelously organized. When I stepped out of the bus this morning here, there was I stepped out of the train, got out of the Fribourg train station. There was a lady standing there, Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, just follow me, perfectly organized. Thank you, each one of you behind the scenes who have made this event possible. And it requires, of course, also leadership. And here my thanks go in particular to Rico Baldegger. Rico, you are doing a fantastic job leading this business school, initiating many new projects, such as this event, but also publishing books about the future of business schools, to name just two. But personally, and more importantly, you are a trusted and always good-humored sparring partner on all matters relating to entrepreneurship and SMEs and much more. Thank you for your leadership, Rico, and your intellectual openness. And for sure, I think lots of the transpiration of this event has been done by Raphael Godard, and I would like to thank you also for your leadership and for your work done here. I'm honored to be here for the launch of the latest GEM report. GEM reports have accompanied my work at the State Secretariat for Economic Affairs, SECO, since its early days. and those days are far in the past. I think, if my information is correct, GEM started in 1997, and shortly afterwards I started at SECO, our institution. Not doing the same thing as today, however, already at that point, GEM was a name to keep in mind. I can assure you that we always follow the publication of the latest Global Entrepreneurship Monitor with great interest. GEM is an extremely valuable resource and provides a unique insight into the world of entrepreneurship. The internationally standardized implementation and collection of data is particularly valuable. This allows the public and policymakers to benchmark their country against similar economies. We find this very important and regularly cite the report in various Swiss government reports. And it has happened more than once that members of parliament or various stakeholders have asked us why entrepreneurship in Switzerland is doing better or worse than in any other country, or why the expert assessment of the entrepreneurial environment is on one dimension better or worse than in any other group of countries. Questions are easy, the answers are more difficult because your beautiful data is a wealth of it. It does, of course, not necessarily always explain why things are like that, and we always have to dig into it, but it gives us the road, the vision where we need to look further into detail. As I also have the honor of chairing the OECD Committee on SMEs and Entrepreneurship, let me say a few words from the OECD perspective. Since 2012, the OECD Center for Entrepreneurship has been making good use of the GEM data. In particular, these data contribute to research and policy papers in the area of inclusive entrepreneurship, regarding the heterogeneity of SMEs and its activities about entrepreneurship, making use of untapped talent. They provide unique insights into the participation of different social groups in entrepreneurial activities, such as youth, seniors, immigrants, women, for the 27 EU member states and the 38 OECD member countries. In addition, the data on attitudes towards entrepreneurship, on a reported entrepreneurial activity, the famous TEA, total early stage activity rate, regularly find their way into the OECD publications such as the SME and Entrepreneurship Outlook and the former Entrepreneurship at a Glance publication. So GEM definitely fills a niche by providing unique data on attitudes to entrepreneurship in an internationally comparable and standardized way. Thank you very much for this, for all your hard work to make this possible, because it seems when the data is nicely put together, this is wonderfully clear. However, behind this data is a lot of hard work and transpiration. Incidentally, ministers from around the world will gather in Paris this June at the OECD for a ministerial meeting devoted exclusively to SMEs and entrepreneurship, and these data will support their work. Now, finally, let me say also a few words on the subject of entrepreneurship itself. And I assure you, these words have not been agreed before or coordinated before with my former speaker here, Member of Parliament Andrey. However, I see that there is more in common than one might think. Of course, good framework conditions, including the necessary institutions, are crucial for entrepreneurs to flourish and provide societally desired results. And for this, your expert interviews and the various dimensions that you show in that beautiful spider web all together for each one country, that gives a really good orientation. Where are the strengths? Where are the weaknesses? We don't need to take each number too literal. However, the direction is really, really good and very, very helpful. At heart, however, from the entrepreneur's perspective, they are contrarians. They do not believe that neither markets nor governments have the best solutions. This is very contrary to the belief of those who don't do business management, like in school like this, but who do public economy, or what we would call the Volkswirtschaft, that have a very different perspective. They say, well, okay, we have a perfect market. But as we have the running joke in our house, you know, that when my wife asks me, well, there is a lamp that doesn't work anymore, I tell her, well, that is just not possible. And she asked me, why not? And I say, well, if this were really broken, the market would have already fixed it. And so that's the standard economist answer. Not taking into account that without the entrepreneurs, that lamp doesn't get fixed. Because entrepreneurs believe that reality is not a given. Reality is created. Maybe the best academics capturing this was Joseph Schumpeter, including his views on necessary government intervention, which is also very interesting. Everybody knows the Schumpeter's creative destruction. Very little is talked about his views about government intervention that are necessary and crucial that good entrepreneurship with societally desired results can flourish. My personal favorite, however, among the economists is Ronald Coase. He is famous for the transaction theory, and maybe he is not a very well-known economist. However, from an entrepreneurial perspective, this is hugely important what his work did about transaction costs. And transaction costs today in many, many entrepreneurial activities or visions is indeed what they do, and what they are, the entrepreneurs, are the real transaction cost terminators. And we need more of those terminators in this world, and to have transaction costs radically decreasing. Now, whoever you pick as your favorite economist, given the enormous challenges facing this planet that has been already mentioned by the former speaker, we definitely need more entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs tackling climate change with new technologies, cheaper processes, fully integrated into a circular economy. Entrepreneurs coming up with ingenious healthcare solutions, with better, cheaper, and more inclusive services. Entrepreneurs with a holistic perspective, offering productivity gains to cope with demographic change and a shrinking workforce. There is plenty to do. There is plenty of opportunity, and entrepreneurs cannot do it alone. They require the right and good governmental set framework conditions, but without them, these grand challenges will certainly not be met. I hope you all enjoy your stay here in Fribourg and look at this and have a look at this fantastic, beautiful city. You will gain, and we will all gain, new insights today into how to support entrepreneurship around the world. And I thank again the GEM community for your hard work, and look forward to the presentations and discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Martin. That was a wonderfully inspiring speech, and we look forward to having you on the panel later to explore a little bit more deeply findings of the report. Before I introduce the chair of our board, José Ionescu-Somers Espinosa, long Spanish names, thank goodness I can speak Spanish. So before I introduce him to make an introductory speech to the launch, I would like to actually thank the entire board of the Global Entrepreneurship Research Association, as it's called. Because the board of GEM gives of its time voluntarily. We have monthly meetings during the year and many other, interim meetings beforehand, after, etc. And there's quite a big responsibility, and it's voluntary. So I applaud that, and I would just like to therefore thank Jeffrey Shea, who's here, from GEM USA, from Babson College, which is one of our founding organizations, as I said this morning. We have Ehud Menipa, who is just there. Ehud Menipa from GEM Israel. We have Fatem Boutaleb, who is Fatem here, where at the back, from GEM Morocco. We have Maribel Guerrero, who's actually not here. She is from GEM Chile. And also we have Niels Bosma. Right, Niels, you're further up. Yes, you got a good seat. From who represents also GEM UK, but is our senior research advisor, and implicates himself in a number of technical projects for GEM. So thank you to all of you. And as you can see, between Mexico, Israel, USA, Morocco, Chile, and the UK, the board is truly representative of our global perspective in GEM. So I'd like a round of applause for the board of GEM. So I hand it over to you now, Ernesto.
Yeah, the short version.
Thank you.
Okay, so welcome to the 2022-2023 Global Report launch. On behalf of the GEM family, the GEM board, the GEM global team, I want to extend our gratitude to all the people that make it possible. That means GEM national teams represented here, our global sponsors, and literally thousands of entrepreneurs and national experts around the world. So thank you very much for attending this annual meeting, and also want to extend my personal thank you to our keynote speakers, Gerhard, Andrey, Martí Godet, Johanna Gapany, but also thank you very much, Rico and Rafael, for your hospitality and for organizing this incredible meeting here in HEG-Fribourg School of Management. It's an incredible venue in an incredible country. Thank you very much. And obviously to Aileen, our GEM Executive Director, and all the rest of the GEM team that are behind this event. Okay, we are now in the 23rd year of data collection. It's incredible. So many years ago, when people inside Babson College and LBS decide to put together this effort of research in order to understand the entrepreneurial dynamics around the world, we never imagined how big and important it's now the GEM project around the world. And now we are living a very peculiar and I know interesting times. As we, Aileen and myself, put in the foreword of the report, please read it. At the beginning, based on Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities, first line, we are living the best of times, and it was the worst of times. So There are no doubt that depends where we live. We are living a very, very incredible worst times, but also a lot of opportunities, because out of crisis always come an opportunity. And imagine what? Who capture the opportunities? Entrepreneurs. So probably we are living the best of times for entrepreneurs. And this is something that we want to highlight, not only because we strongly believe on entrepreneurial dynamic, the entrepreneurs, women and men around the world that are capturing these opportunities, and because we are living in an era of big challenges. These are the main driving to solve all the problems, the big problems that we are having now. And in order to move to the new normal, these opportunities are obviously the main input for our entrepreneurs. So with this report, we want to highlight that not only the policymakers in some countries are, striving harder to make easier for entrepreneurs, and also because the entrepreneurs are doing amazing things to, retake and undertake these problems out of the many challenges that we are now living, to grasp the opportunities. So in this interface between the policy making and also the entrepreneurs that work all the days that contribute to the economy and social recovery of our countries, we strongly believe that we are now living the best of times. Our aspiration on GEM is very clear: provide insights to policymakers to do the better decision to truly promote entrepreneurship around the world. But also, a fundamental question is here: how we can transform from in our activities like scholars, like researchers, but also how we can influence all the stakeholders around entrepreneurial dynamics around the world to create wealth and contribute to social well-being around the world. So this is the opportunity to transform the worst of times to the best of times, and back to the new normal, back to the normality with the help of the women and men that are behind these incredible entrepreneurial endeavors around the world. And this is our commitment on GEM. Make entrepreneurs key actors in our society, key actors in our economic development, and key actors to change the world. With this big challenge, entrepreneurs are the key actors behind the new normal. So thank you very much on behalf of the GEM board. Thank you very much on behalf of the GEM family. And I will give the floor for formally present the findings for this year, 2022-2023 Global Report, adapting to the new normal, from the main author lead author, Stephen Hill. Thank you very much for attending this annual meeting.
Yep. Put up the slides.
Okay, good morning. Just check you can hear me at the back. Yeah, good. Okay. This is, well, it's a pleasure to be back in Switzerland. Haven't been here for a while. I didn't realize how long it was since I've been here until I tried to pay for my coffee at the airport. And I was told, this is old money. Oh. This is the kingdom of stable currency. What are you doing? So, this is the 4th year I've been involved in writing the global report. I have to say, I'm finding it a bit daunting today. And it's daunting not only because of you, but because of this. 170,000 plus respondents. Over 2,000 experts. How do I sum that up in a few slides? Maybe 15 minutes. I'm less daunted by my co-authors, most of them are here, because most of those will tell me before the end of the day how my performance went. Okay, it's a difficult time to be conducting surveys, it usually is. I should start by saying thank you for those 49 national teams that conducted the APS and the 51 teams in the NES. Next slide. These don't worry if you can't read the slides. These are straight out of the global report, so they're all in that book that you got this morning. These are the teams. These are divided into income groups. We use $20,000 and $40,000 as the borders to give us 13 low, 16 medium, and 22 high income economies. It's a bit too many high income. We could have used 25,000 and 50,000. That would have given us 17 economies in the low income group, 22 in the medium, and 12 in the high. That's going to have to happen at some point, but are we ready? Are the teams and the people in Italy, Japan, Korea, the UK, and Spain, are you ready to be called medium income rather than high income? Okay. The pandemic has certainly not gone away. Thank you. This is showing in the low-income economies, those low-income economies, I mentioned 3 out of 4 adults reported the pandemic had decreased their household income in 2022. In the middle-income economies, it was about 3 out of 5, and in the high-income economies, it was less than 1 in 3. All of this is in the report. This picture is in the report. So the pandemic is still affecting household income, but it's affecting those who can afford it least the most. The lowest income economy in our sample was Togo, by far the poorest, but by far the highest proportion of adults reporting their household income had been reduced. Whoops, I've gone the wrong way. Okay. Has the pandemic decreased the proportion of adults who see good opportunities to start a new business? Well, the answer, like many of these answers, is yes and no. This slide compares 2019, pre-pandemic, to 2022. So there are 37 economies. In 18 economies, the proportion who see good opportunities had increased by more than a percentage point. In 15 economies, the proportion who see good opportunities have gone down by more than a percentage point. So it's a very mixed picture. If I move on, this to me is a really interesting picture because this shows the proportion of adults in each economy who see good opportunities but would not start a business for fear it might fail. And I think this is becoming increasingly important. More than in the highest income group, more than 2 out of 5 will be deterred by the fear of failure in 16 economies. In the middle income economies, it was 2 out of 5 in 13, and in the low income economies, it was in 9 economies. So it's common across all income groups. So the fear of failure is a major reason why many economies who've got high proportions seeing good opportunities, high levels of opportunity recognition, high confidence in their own skills and abilities, think it's easy to start a business, but still have low intentions. We're talking about economies like Saudi Arabia, Brazil, even the Netherlands and Qatar. High proportions in all those, but also higher proportions who see fear of failure. And this is restricting the number of new businesses. I'll move on to the star of the show. This is what everybody wants to see. Where is entrepreneurial activity highest and where is it lowest? There are 9 economies where the level of T total early stage entrepreneurial activity is more than 20%. But there are also, I think, there are 22 economies who've got a level of T that is less than 10%. There is some association with income, but it's not direct. Established business ownership presents a similar picture, but not as extreme. We've got Korea, the highest, just over 20%, but we've got 8 economies with less than 10% of adults running an established business. So, did the pandemic decrease early stage entrepreneurial activity? I think you know the answer by now, yes and no. Right? If we look at 2019, this is 2019 to 2022, and it's a very mixed picture. There were 13 economies where entrepreneurial activity was highest in 2022, but also 11 economies where entrepreneurial activity was lowest in 2022. In general, and obviously I'm generalizing, entrepreneurial activity fell from 2019 to 2020 and then has recovered slowly. Although there are some exceptions, and 21 to 22 presents a slightly different picture because we're starting to see impacts of things other than the pandemic. If we look at motivations, I've got 2 slides in terms of motivations. The first one, the proportion of adults who agreed to make a difference in the world and the proportion who agreed to build high wealth and high income. Making a difference is generally more important in the low and the medium income economies than in the high income economies. So South Africa, India, Guatemala, Romania, each had more than 80% agree. Making a difference in the world was one of their motivations. But in Morocco, China, Poland, and Korea, it was less than 20%. To build great wealth is very popular in a limited number of economies. More than 7 out of 10 in India, Indonesia, South Africa, etc. All income groups are represented. Nowhere was it less than a third. A family tradition is important in some specific economies, more than a half in Guatemala, Egypt, India, and Mexico, but less than a fifth in Morocco, Poland, and Korea. Earning a living because jobs are scarce is popular everywhere and at all times, but generally decreases with income. It was least popular in Taiwan, Sweden, and Korea. Okay, new questions, recent questions, ask whether those who are starting or running a new business take environmental or social implications into account. And the majority do. This one is looking at the environmental implications, but it's pretty much the same picture with social implications. The majority do take this account, slightly more established businesses than new businesses. Only 2 economies had less than half of their early stage entrepreneurs agreeing, and that was Oman and Israel, and only 2 had less than half of their established businesses agreeing, and that was Iran and Israel. Early stage agreement 90% or more in a large number of Latin American economies. Brazil, Guatemala, Puerto Rico, Chile, Panama, as well as the UAE and in Slovenia. So we saw earlier that the pandemic had had a mixed effect on the proportion of adults who see good opportunities. This is a slightly different picture. This is looking at those who are starting to running a new business. and expecting to employ no more people in 5 years' time. And there's a surprising number of economies where the proportion of those starting new businesses expect to employ no one else but themselves in 5 years' time is significantly higher in 2022 than 2019. So there's been an increase in the number of solo entrepreneurs, and that's across all income levels, including Luxembourg, Switzerland, the USA, Germany, Spain, Canada, high income countries. There's also been a sharp increase in 21 to 22, which could well have something to do with higher energy prices and the changes taking place. Okay. The next slide looks at where the customers come from. Internationalization seems to increase with income. Note the dominance of local customers in some specific economies: Indonesia, South Africa, India, Mexico, Chile, but also Saudi Arabia at the end of that slide. Then we come back to a favorite topic of mine, which is the gender gap. Here, we're looking at the ratio of female to male. Early stage entrepreneurship is the blue one. Established businesses is the orange one. Anything that is below the dashed line, less women than men. Anything above the dashed line, more women than men. Look at all that white space under that dashed line. We've got a very long way to go. So lots of progress being made, but a very long way to go. For early stage entrepreneurial activity, higher levels for women than men in Togo, Indonesia, and Poland. Very close in India, Oman, Spain, and Qatar. For established businesses, more women than men in Venezuela, Togo, Indonesia, Israel, close in Poland and Switzerland. But look how unequal those proportions are in Egypt, Serbia, Croatia, Latvia, Taiwan, Japan, Cyprus, Norway, Sweden, etc. There's still a very long way to go. The point about this is not just numbers. These are businesses that could be happening that aren't. These are businesses maybe that should be happening that aren't. Okay. The next one is looking at graduates. I don't think there's any news here. There's only 4 economies where non-graduates were more likely to be starting or running a new business than graduates. This was Tunisia, Brazil, also Qatar and Saudi Arabia. I think the point about this is that increasing the proportion of people into higher education looks like it would also increase the proportion of people who are starting new businesses. That's quite an important message. I think this is the most interesting slide, really. I was really quite taken with this one, and all it's doing is to simply plot early stage entrepreneurial activity on the vertical axis and the rate of business exits on the horizontal axis. Look at the shaded area. This is the area where the level of T is less than 15% and the level of business exits is less than 6%. Every European economy is inside that shaded area. And a few others. It includes Taiwan, China, Japan, South Africa, Israel, and Korea. Just as interesting, outside that shaded area, every economy is not in Europe. Some have got low levels of T and high levels of exits, such as India and Indonesia. And some have got high T and high exits. The point I'm making, the shaded area, I think, is relatively low levels of entrepreneurial activity. And that's quite a big generalization, but I think maybe the data justifies that generalization. What I don't have is an explanation. Why is it higher in some cultures than others? Well, I use the word cultures rather than economies. But I'm sure we're going to talk about this one. Okay, I've almost finished. This one looks at the NECI, the National Entrepreneurship National Entrepreneurial Context Index. The UAE has widened the gap at the top. Notice that of the top 10, 7 out of the top 10 are from Asia. Also, 2 out of the top 10 are low-income economies. And I have to say, having high income is not a guarantee of a high level of NECI. Look where Spain and Italy find themselves in 2022. However, there's clearly some association with income. 6 of the bottom 10 are low-income economies, and the other 4 are medium-income economies. So the point is that high income is no guarantee of a supportive entrepreneurial environment. Low income is not necessarily an obstacle for having that environment. And I think the point, what makes this really interesting is I'm beginning to think, and you love of you, I'm beginning to think that attitudes can be as important as resources. And that some of these low-income economies have got a very positive approach to entrepreneurship, and that is reflected in some of these numbers. Okay, this is the last of the data slides, and it compares the NECI, the National Entrepreneurial Context Index, to the Global Innovation Index. You talked about innovation earlier. This is interesting. There's a positive association between the two. But having a high NECI is not a guarantee of a high level of innovation. A high level of innovation is not a guarantee of a high NECI. So, for example, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and India have got relatively high NECI, but only middling in terms of innovation. The UK, Sweden, the US and Switzerland, they've got high levels for the innovation index, but many of those are middling in terms of the NECI. It's interesting to speculate what the reasons are. My conclusion, and it's a personal one, is that it's not just about how well off you are, how well off the economy is, it's also about how long that economy has been well off. That economies like Switzerland, the UK, and the USA have been fairly well off for a long time. And that's allowed them to develop the institutions that support innovation, particularly in the sciences and research. Okay, the final 2 slides. This is straight out of the report. These are just the headlines from the executive summary. So you'll find all of these in the report. And I've talked about many of these anyway. And I think that's probably it from me, but I cannot conclude without big thanks to the co-authors, and there are many of them, and we worked hard and long. Big thanks to the GEM team. Betty to Francis, sat in the corner there, hiding in the corner. Francis is Lord of the data. Okay. And has been a rock throughout, especially when I confuse myself over these numbers. But mostly, and I started with this and I'll finish with this, I want to thank the national teams. None of this would happen without the enormous effort in getting all those interviews sorted. So that's it. You've all got a copy of the reports. We've got much to talk about. So thank you for your time.
Well, I think he may join us a little later. I'm not sure. He's enjoying the scenery of HEG-Fribourg. So I think you know Stephen already. You know Martin. He's going to come in this moment, hopefully. And you know Ernesto, Jeffrey, member of the board. I introduced him earlier. And there are two other people here that you don't know yet. One is Thomas Schutz, and he took a very active role for, say, the countries that you were involved in for the GEM work this
I
year.
used to be is it on?
Yes.
Oh, too bad. I used to be team leader in Denmark for a decade or so, but since then I worked with mostly people in the Middle East, Morocco, Egypt, Iran, Turkey. Who knows where I don't know.
And so, yeah, that's why we have Thomas on the panel, because he can loop into quite a number of countries, quite important countries from our point of view in the Middle East. And then we have Shamak. I did well with that name. It's the short version of this, which is really very unpronounceable. My Romanian husband was giving me lessons the other day on how to pronounce this, and I haven't retained it. So I got the short form, Shamak. Okay, welcome, Martin. Okay, and Shamak actually has a wide perspective as well, because I think you read every single chapter, and you were, very involved with the data team as well, and has the kind of overview and broader perspective. All right, so let's kick this off. I want to leave a good bit of time at the end, the second half of the session, to make sure that you can interact with the panel. So I'm just going to kick things off with a few questions. Ernesto, I'll start with you. So, yeah, I mean, I think we got a feeling, especially from Steve's presentation, that both the adult population survey and the national expert survey, giving us the NESI index, are very important from a global and national standpoint. But can you add your perspective on what Steve already said on that importance from your point of view as the kind of global board chair, but also maybe bring a few points in from your GEM Mexico experience. Thank you.
Thank you. You need to use the same mic. I mean, you don't need it. You have this.
I can. Okay.
Thank you very much, and Aileen, and also congratulate Steve for the presentation, and for all the people that make it possible, co-authors. Yes, in many ways, that's something that makes GEM unique. This primary data collection, and we know how hard is collect primary data collection at this time, but historically, probably the most unique characteristic of GEM, and also in any kind of international measurement projects, it's understand the specific phenomena around, in this case, obviously, entrepreneurship, using these both perspectives. So the adult population survey captures the attitudes, activities, and aspirations of women and men that are undertaking the new venture creation, and also they are business owners. And in this way, it's very relevant in terms to measure these specific dynamics and make it comparable around the world with different countries. As Steve mentioned, also you, Aileen, how we can use this at country level is very, very important, because reflects specifically how this dynamic is behave inside our countries, and also in some countries as Spain, UK, Chile, and also in Mexico. We use exactly the same methodology to move to a regional approach and also a city approach. Okay, APS help a lot to understand specific dynamics for some specific contextual places, and it's unique. It's unique, and that's the reason that we can also extract a lot of information. Obviously, APS don't solve any question around entrepreneurship, and we also need to take care about that, because sometimes we want to extract some specific information that is okay, but we cannot infer so many, information, because in some countries, the subsamples result in a very few individuals. So we need to take care about that. But in general, it's a very rich, unique information. And when we compare with the National Expert Survey, and I need to confess that for me, it's a very, very useful tool also, okay? I made a lot of research using National Expert Survey, not only from Latin America, but around the world, in order to understand the environment, this modern conceptualization around entrepreneurship ecosystems, how the factors that shape entrepreneurial activity in some specific places are so relevant. So the combination, use both sources of information, is very, very relevant to understand the context, to understand the specific dynamics that come from the entrepreneurs, from the population, and combine. And this is my final comment. Combine, make these both views using these approaches, these methodological approaches. It's a very richness. And again, this makes GEM unique around the world. There is probably no other research project around the world that capture this type of information at country level, at regional level, and now at city level. And this is very important in order to take advantage of that and inform policy, inform academia, inform practitioners also how relevant is entrepreneurship dynamics in this context.
Thank you very much. I'll just turn to you, Martin, because you mentioned your work with the OECD earlier, and then Steve presented the results. So I guess both from a global and Swiss perspective, you might have been sitting there thinking about what does this mean? So I'd love to hear your views on what does this actually say about entrepreneurship, the state of the art today? And then maybe what does the future look like from your perspective? Big question.
Indeed. I will certainly not fulfill all your wishes to answer them. First, for us, of course, first to look back and see, okay, what happened in these last 2, 3, 4 years. And these 2, 3, 4 years were really exceptional. I don't think that's anything new. We can see here for Switzerland the confirmation of what Philip has presented, that yes, we were generally less hard hit, much less hard hit as a high-income country than in other countries in countries with lower income levels. I think that's a very important part. Even entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurial activity has not significantly decreased. Actually, in 2020, it even increased regarding the effective commercial registry data. So we did see that not only during COVID crisis there was an increase, but also then due to the governmental support measures in place, existing businesses and especially existing small businesses did not go bankrupt, and we didn't have any kind of bankruptcy wave. Actually, we even have a reduction of bankruptcy in the COVID years, which we correlate to the governmental support measures that were various ones. So I think that's for Switzerland. Looking back on that, then also maybe the other element that I would like to say is, let's go first on the GEM itself. I think because the state of the art has a lot to do with how we explain these data. I always say, for me, GEM is a raw gem. It's not yet a polished diamond, which means this is the data. And then the next question are those that Philip put forward with his charts, and he correlated the data. And then we can see, yes, there is a clear correlation between, for instance, innovation and entrepreneurial activity. There is also a certain correlation overall in a very streamlined version between the entrepreneurial ecosystem, the framework conditions, the institutional aspects, and the quality of the entrepreneurship. Those are correlations. However, policymakers are not interested in correlations. Just to let you know, what they're interested in is causations, and it's causality that is the thing. So I want to, as you are the research community here, I want to encourage you to come up with models and test models that create an empirical background to that explain the causal effect, the results that actually are in here. So we need to have the causal relationships. For instance, of course, we believe entrepreneurship causes innovation, because you showed it very clear in your chart that there is a good positive correlation. However, where is the evidence? And there are many other aspects on this. Don't want to go, but I want to encourage you, go forward in your research, making use of the data and creating models that can explain it. And then lastly, the future of entrepreneurship. A few points, a few personal reflections. Those are my personal reflections. First, we see that the future is, I believe, is the aspirations we have not yet fulfilled. The things we have already done cannot be the way to go. We have already done them. We have done it. Fantastic. So where we have not yet fulfilled the aspirations. One thing Philip showed, gender. So women entrepreneurship. That's definitely one place where aspirations have not yet fulfilled. Digital. We need definitely more this native digital entrepreneurship, and we do see that. I mean, Liip, of course, that is a company from the member of parliament who spoke this morning, is one of those. But there are many others, and we are just at the beginning. We're still at the beginning. That business models are thought from the beginning with a digital perspective, and not as usually most companies are still in a non-digital world that then gradually move and make a transition into the digital world. And we will have to radically rethink that and basically say, what if we restarted the company from a purely digital technology perspective and data perspective, and then make use of everything we have. And then, of course, green. We need a huge energy transition. We need a huge transition into the circular economy. There is plenty of opportunity there. And lastly, social impact. Social impact. I mentioned, for instance, the healthcare. Healthcare in most countries around the world, if not in all, is a huge issue. And being able to bring healthcare to a large number of people to an affordable cost, we will need radically new solutions than in the past. So if my guess, what is the future of entrepreneurship? I would say more female, more digital, more green, and social.
Thank you. Great. Well, Steve, I think you actually developed quite well or very well, the situation with the pandemic, the impact. But I mean, we've just about come out of one crisis, gone into another. You yourself come from a country that's fairly well in turmoil a lot of the time, you know, well, you don't come from, you lived in a country, and you led Lebanon for how many years?
A while.
A while. Okay, that's not really. So crisis, you're well used to looking at the impact of crisis. Martin already talked about the impact on Switzerland. But we seem to be, we're you know, we did think we were going into, you know, another crisis now with the war in Ukraine. I know that there's certain countries are very affected. Anna Tarnowa mentioned it, you know, Poland has been incredibly affected. But are we into, is this our new normal now, crisis? And what is this new normal?
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Again, can you hear me at the back? Yeah, okay. I'm sure you're not suggesting that crises follow me around.
No, that's
I can't help thinking how quickly the world changes. Okay? I attended the GEM launch in Miami, which is when we first started to talk about a pandemic and what it might mean.
Yeah.
It's 3 years on. It's been, but it hasn't gone. Okay? The pandemic is still here. We keep asking questions about the impact of the pandemic because the pandemic keeps impacting. The thing that when we look at GEM data, I see so much and know so little. When we started this, when I started to get involved in the global report, Francis tried to send me the individual responses for each of the economies. And I was in Beirut at the time and the internet just melted. So I said, please don't send me that. I'll stick to summaries. All we're doing is scratching the surface. I said this morning, what frightens me most is how to represent 176,000 respondents. Well, the answer is you can't. So, inevitably, anything we say in the global report is scratching the surface. It's superficial. But I think that's okay, because we're not looking in detail at individual economies. That's not our job. And Donna taught me some time ago, that's a job for the national teams. Okay, so it's up to you. It's up to you, national teams, to delve deeply into those individual economies. One thing I will say is that the impacts keep coming, and they're going to keep coming. You know all this. You know about changes in opportunities. First of all, there was all the medical opportunities. Then there was changes in how we shop. These things are still happening, and the high street is not what it was, and it won't go back to what it was. And of course, entrepreneurs see opportunities. Businesses close and new ones open. The war in Ukraine, well, when we started, when you did the interviews, it wasn't much into the war in Ukraine, and things were only just starting to change, but you could already see some impacts. Partly, and I tried to say this when I looked at the proportion of new entrepreneurs who don't expect to employ anybody else in the next 5 years, and how that's increased 21, 22. But also this year, I got involved in writing the policy roadmaps. And we started by asking each national team, how is your economy doing? And the stories that come back were very consistent. We're all struggling. We're entering another recession, or at least it seemed like that at the time. Prices are going through the roof. We're having to adjust. That process has been continuing since those interviews. When we go back next year, that will become much more evident. But certainly, economies like Poland were already suffering, and I'm sure they will continue to suffer. So please take the time to look at those policy roadmaps, those individual economy profiles, and look at the national reports as soon as they come out. That is where you will get a deep picture of each individual economy.
Thanks, Steve. Actually, before we go to the audience, what I want to do is give the opportunity to Jeff, Thomas, and Johanna to actually become a little bit more granular about your particular country, maybe in the context of the chapter that you were involved in writing. I'll leave it to you, really. Jeff, would you like to start off?
Sure, thanks, thanks, Aileen. And I'd like to start. I just had this revelation when I was sitting up here, and Stephen, thanks for pointing out, the 176,000 surveys, right? I mean, that, if you look at it, think of one of the most influential studies in our time was Gerhard Hofstede's study. And what do we always talk about with Gerhard Hofstede? That he had 113,000 people, IBM employees, respond to that survey. He did it once. We do it every year. So I would like everybody just one more time, let's clap for Jim. And no, I'm not a motivational speaker, so that was pretty much it. But seriously, just absolutely, I'm a Babson background, Babson undergrad, disciple of Bill Bygraves and Jeff Timmons, and MBA there. And then when I returned to Babson as a faculty member and had the opportunity, Donna Kelly sends her best to everybody. She asked me to be on the Gen board and to become actively, involved in it. And it's just been incredible. And it's incredible what we're all doing here. In the context, so my chapter, and Stephen is just wonderful to work with. So any of you that get tapped to work with him on a chapter in the future, please say yes. He's just exceptional to work with. We had a great time. My chapter looked at, we looked at the opportunities and how confident people were, and whether starting it was easy. And one of the most fascinating outcomes of that was the more that the individual respondents said that it was easy, that they were confident in their skills and experience, and that they saw that there was an opportunity, they had those top countries had a higher degree of fear of failure, which is fascinating, right? And so what it says for all of us here, if we want to promote entrepreneurship in our countries, then we have to do something to allay some of that fear. And that was the discussions that Stephen and I had was, okay, well, but what do you do to allay that fear? And there's some obvious things, right? And we look at like some of the other data, and that's what I find fascinating about data, is you can look across the different chapters and you can say things like, the more educated you are, the more likely you are to start an entrepreneurial venture, to start a company, right? So if that's the case, then maybe we should be educating people more about how to mitigate those risks. And when we have the younger population, when they're learning those things, maybe we should have more just not on the fun stuff, the low-hanging fruit, which is, hey, let's come up with an idea, but maybe we should have more in our classrooms about how you mitigate the risk, how you figure out and how you develop a real sense of confidence based on real skills and real experience that will allow you to actually go out and start something. The other thing that, Stephen, that when I was sitting here and I was listening to you and everything and thinking about it on the flight here, I think the reality is, and this is just my personal opinion, I think the reality is a certain amount of fear of failure is actually good. It's like having some turnover in an organization is good. It's like a natural rate of unemployment is good, right? Because it encourages, for example, when I deal with my college students, especially at a place like Babson, you know, everybody just thinks we could start a business and it's easy and I'm confident and I have all this experience. I'm 20 years old, right? But I have all this experience. A certain amount of fear is kind of good because I think that it makes you work harder. It makes you work smarter. It makes you reach out and find more resources, more people to connect with to make sure that you're mitigating that risk to a certain degree. So I think those things are important, and I think I'd like to just reflect on what Martin said as well, is I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg with what we do with the national report. I think combining these data, like we report and we stick to the GEM data, but combining these data with other data and other indicators so that we can make a bigger impact and digging deeper, you know, the correlations, it's fine because we're focused on just the data we have in the GEM global report. But I think going beyond that and looking at causation and trying to, you know, really make some difference in policy and startups, because we all know that entrepreneurship changes the world and in a very positive way. So,
Thank you.
as Forrest Gump said, that's all I have to say.
Okay, so comments, yeah, your perspective.
Yeah, I participated in writing the chapter on exiting, meaning that we have entrepreneurs who discontinue as entrepreneurs running a business. And I'm going to talk about 4 or 5 points. First, the reasons for studying exiting. Secondly, what kinds of people are exiting. Thirdly, what has happened to the people that have exited. Fourth, the importance in society of these people who have exited. And number 5, the policy that we can think about.
And all in 3 minutes.
Inshallah. So we have studied exiting for 2 decades actually, and we've learned a good deal about exiting. But the situation right now in recent years has been new. We studied reasons for exiting such as failure of the business, retirement, selling a business. But what was new is that now we have the pandemic forcing people out of their businesses. So that's a new reason for exiting. So we should think about what are the implications of that phenomenon. Secondly, the kinds of people who have exited, they're different this time around with the pandemic. I would think, and we find that these people are more competent. They are actually quite optimistic because they don't blame themselves for having exited. It was rather like a bad luck. I was in the restaurant business, or I was a barber, and I just had to quit because of the circumstances. So the people we have exited are quite different from those who have exited earlier. And when we study what has happened to these many people who exited during the pandemic, we find that very many of them have intentions to start again. We've studied their intentions and find that they are quite high. The people are competent, they are energetic, they are optimistic about the future, partly because they don't blame themselves for their exiting. And the importance to society of these people is that there are many of them, and they are highly skilled, many of them. So they are a huge resource that society can possibly tap into. So we can think actually of the pandemic as being an external enabler, also in this respect. But now to the policy. I'm glad we have a policy maker here. Because I think the governments around the world, especially in Europe perhaps, made a great effort with some success at helping businesses to survive during the pandemic. Especially maybe in the Nordic countries where I'm from, the government supported very actively businesses to survive, but they ignored, I think, the ones who exited. I think many policies can be made specifically tailored for those who exited during the pandemic, because they are prepared to enter again, and they're skilled, they have enthusiasm, and they want to, but governments have been reluctant to support them. I think they can, to be more concrete, they can enter into teams. We think traditionally in our study about entrepreneurs as a very individual people, individualistic even, and we study each one individual rather than the team, almost. We ask about owners, but not much. So I can think about these people who exited as potentially entering teams where they can utilize their great experience, teaming up with young people who are starting a business. Two more points. Do I have 10 seconds more?
10 seconds.
Thank you. They need a little bit more skills because times have changed. They need to be skilled in digitalization. And these people who have exited are typically not the people who are skilled in digitalization. 5 seconds more. Second one is sustainability. That is new on the agenda, and these people who have exited are typically not thinking in that direction. So I really think that teaming up with young people to start a business can be very fruitful. And I hope the policymakers would make an effort to promote that.
Thank you. All right, I really trying to promote.
My name is Przemek. Hello. The full version is Przemysław, and you might have a problematic with reading from the screen because it's a mirror image. You can see there. So it's Przemysław, and I'm really happy to be here, and I'm happy to be a co-author of the Global report. Thank you for that opportunity. And when we worked with Steve, especially on the chapter about gaps, so gender gap, age gap, and education gap, it really hit me how the gap is sometimes widening between how the gender